I do want to talk about projection and corners, and I swear I will land this plane and the idea of corners will all make sense. But basically, as it comes to, for people who are listening and maybe are unfamiliar with projection, I think some of these words that you've heard on the podcast as of late, or even up to this point, a lot of them are buzzer words, but there's just so much more meaning behind them. I was talking about that on the podcast with the therapist Bianca Grace on the episode on codependency, and how like narcissism is a buzzer word. Codependency is a buzzer word, but like at the core of it, not a lot of us know what they really mean. And I feel like the same is true with projection. You'll often hear people, because I'm guilty of it too, you'll hear people say like, oh, they're projecting on me, or like that's I guess a great defense mechanism or comeback, if you will, on, someone saying something that how they feel about you, or saying something about you, and you saying, well, that's not really me, that's you projecting on me. It's not a valid or unbiased or thought about that person. Anyways, so for those of you listening that maybe don't know what projection is like dumping clutter into someone else's living room. Like you just have a bunch of stuff, you just dump it, and then you're like, wow, you're really messy, but like it's all of your mess. So that's the best way, especially with like emotional clutter and all the things. Like think about it in that way. That is what I would say projection is. Now, as it relates to projection and corners, I had this like really beautiful experience where in like a meditative state where my subconscious was just like talking to me very loudly and was like, you take on people's stories as your own, but they're just corners. And as I explored that deeper, I'm like, corners, like what do you mean they're just corners? And then when you think about corners, like a corner is where two things meet, right? A corner, like a corner of a room. Not a lot can be put in a corner, right? You think about like putting a baby in a corner or a child in a corner when they're in trouble. Like if you're looking in a corner, like all you can see is literally everything in that little corner. And that can be your whole world, that small little crevice. But all it takes is a perspective shift. So you can turn around and look at all of what else is in the room to see literally what else is in the room. And so I sat with that. I talked with my therapist about that. And I was like, wow, like my subconscious is so kind to tell me that like some of this stuff isn't yours to keep or take on. It's not even about you. It's other people's projections that you may feel like, well, is this about me? Is this something I should explore? Am I struggling with this? And that perspective shift for me was like, okay, well, if I want to explore those deeper levels of myself, I have the opportunity to. I don't have to sit in this corner and accept everything as true, right? Because on the one end, we talked about the level of projection and that being a comeback for somebody. But it could also be a level of deflection on your end, right? So let's just say if somebody maybe isn't projecting and calls out something within you and you're like, yeah, you're just projecting. Like that can be an excuse to not kind of do the work. But what I love about this corner analogy is that you can choose to sit in the corner and look in the corner and be in that corner and accept whatever it is that's true. Or you can say, hey, let me turn around, shift my perspective and decide, is this true about me? Should I explore this a little bit deeper, or is this not true about me? And is it truly just a projection? And so, yeah, that's kind of what I've been working on. And I wanted to share that with you as I'm kind of going through it. We can kind of go through it together.